Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel, That Model Railway Guy, and welcome to the start of a brand new little series that I'm going to be trying out. Now, right off the bat, this video has been sponsored by Derails. They're long-time supporters of the channel, fantastic model shop, and I'll be telling you why that is a little bit later on. But as you may have guessed from the title, today I'm going to attempt to fit DCC sounds to the Hornby 040 Sentinel. So this is the version that came out in 2014, not the more recent 060 model. And as much as I love this loco, I did find that it has a tendency to stall because of its short wheelbase. I don't know if you can see that there, but yeah. It's also quite light too. It doesn't have a heavy die-cast body like the Peckett's, for example. And so I often find myself not running this loco because I just can't rely on it, especially when it comes to slow speed shunting. So I've decided I want to put a stay alive in the Sentinel to improve its performance, but at the same time I thought, well, what if I go all out with this and fit sound at the same time? Now, most of you who know this model will be aware that there's not a lot of space in here. It's definitely not been designed with DCC sound in mind, and I think it's going to be quite a challenge. So let's get the body off, we'll take a look inside and I'll show you what we're working with. So today I'll be fitting a Zemo sound decoder from YouTube with their Sentinel sound file pre-installed. We need to start by dismantling the loco though, which isn't as straightforward as you'd expect. There are two screws on the underside fairly close together at the end with the shorter bonnet. This one is easy to spot and is easily unscrewed. To access the second screw, you need to remove both the coupling and the NEM pocket it sits in to reveal the screw underneath. I do this by levering it out with the screwdriver, and then the second screw can be removed too. Before we remove the body from the chassis, you can see we have a couple of wire handrails which need to be unclipped. The smaller bonnet then comes away as a separate piece. And the same needs to be done at the other end too. With those handrails unclipped, the main section of the body can then be lifted off. Inside you'll see we have a fairly simple cab moulding, and the top of this unclips to reveal the DCC socket inside. As there isn't much space inside, I'll be using a Zemo MS500F. This is a very small 6-pin decoder which has a wired harness. I need the harness rather than a direct plug-in version, as you'll notice that the loco also has a male 6-pin plug too rather than a socket. As a result, I'll have to hardwire this decoder in, which to be fair I was already planning to do to save some space. On that note, this sound decoder is pretty small, but even so it doesn't quite fit into the space below the cab. So to combat this, we need to remove part of the blue floor moulding. This will be easier to do away from the loco, so I'll loosen the two screws that hold it in place, which are situated on either side of the worm. And to fully release it, there's also a bracket holding the motor in place. There are two more tiny screws to loosen here, which allows that bracket to be removed. The worm and motor can then be slightly lifted just to allow the floor piece to slide out. And all I'm going to do is trim away this section of plastic here. I can do this really quickly using a modelling knife. And then I'll just neaten up that cut with a small file. So hopefully the decoder will now fit, and you can see, yes, it does now sit inside this section. That's not the end of it though, as on the top section we have these clips which hang down and would hit the decoder, so these need to be cut off too. Removing these doesn't seem to be an issue, as the top still clips back in place even without them there, and you can see we now have the decoder sat inside. So now that we've made some adjustments to the cab area, we can start the actual sound fitting process. I'll start by adding some Captain tape to the decoder. This is a thin but durable tape that'll stop the decoder accidentally shorting on anything. I'm also going to cut away the plug from the decoder. The plug from the loco can be removed as well, and I'm just holding this steady with some tweezers while I cut each wire. It's time to hardwire the decoder now, and I'll start by desoldering the red and black wires on the loco that lead to the pickups. Instead, I'll solder the black wire from the decoder directly onto the pickups to save space. I then do the same with the red wire to the other set of pickups. Since I don't need to access this area anymore, I'll fit the plastic floor back in place. And I'll also reinstate the bracket that holds the motor down too. And then all the screws are tightened up to hold everything in place. The decoder is then situated inside of the floor piece so that I have more of an idea where to run the various wires. For example, the two purple wires on the decoder will go to the speaker, and I'll just add some solder to the ends of these to make them easier to attach. The speaker I'm using today is a Minnow 4 from U-Choose. It's a decent speaker considering the size, and it'll fit nicely inside the small bonnet. The wires are then soldered to the speaker, and it doesn't matter which way round these go. Now to add a stay alive to make this Sentinel foolproof when shunting. For this I need the blue and grey twisted wires from the Zemo decoder. I'm also going to use the Zemo Stay Alive connection kit, which comes with a couple of capacitors and a control board. I need to join these two capacitors together, so I'll bend the anode from one to meet the cathode on the other capacitor. I'll then add a little bit of solder just to join these together. And then trim off the excess wire. I then need to connect the capacitors to the wires from the control board, with the blue wire going to the remaining anode. The grey wire then goes to the remaining cathode on the other capacitor. With those wires soldered on, the excess is then trimmed away. Finally, the blue and grey wires from the decoder need to be soldered to the correct pads on the control board to link everything together. And of course, if you buy one of these kits, it comes with a little instruction manual showing how you connect everything up like this. The final bit of soldering to do is to connect the orange and grey wires from the decoder to the orange and grey wires to the motor. And these joints are then just insulated with Kapton tape to prevent any short circuits. So that's all the wiring. Now I just have to try and fit everything inside and get the body back on. There's just enough space for the two capacitors to sit on top of the decoder, and then I can put the blue cab moulding back in place. And you can see I use the tweezers to push the wires inside where necessary. Kapton tape is then added to the control board as well. Sound decoders aren't cheap, and so I don't want to take any chances here. This board then slots into the opening at the back of the cab moulding, and this is where Hornby originally intended a standard decoder to be fitted. Before I put the body back on, I'll just add a driver figure to the cab for some extra detail. This is just a cheap 3D printed figure I had going spare, and I've removed his legs in order to fit him inside. Sorry. The main part of the body and cab can then be fitted back into place. And I'll replace the screw I removed earlier to hold it fast. I'll now add a small blob of black tack to the speaker, and then this can be pushed into the smaller bonnet for the other end. This is then fitted to the loco, and I'll screw this back down too. Finally, I'll go around the loco refitting the wire handrails I unclipped earlier, and that is the entire process done. So I may have been able to physically fit a decoder, stay alive and speaker into this tiny model, but will it actually work? Well, let's take it over to the layout to find out. So, before we check out the final results, I do just want to remind you that this episode has very kindly been sponsored by Derails. Now, Derails are a fantastic model shop who many of you know I use personally all the time. In fact, I've got a few locos on pre-order with them at the moment, and their customer service is second to none. They actually check all the locos individually before shipping them out to you to make sure you get it in exactly the condition you're expecting, which, yeah, it's just fantastic customer service. As much as any business is about making a profit, Derails really do feel like they care about their customers and they do everything they can to make buying from them a great experience. If you've never tried them before, well, check them out at derails.co.uk or click the link that's down in the description. I highly recommend them and I've never heard anyone say a bad word about them, which I think speaks for itself, to be honest. So yeah, thanks so much to Derails for sponsoring this video, and now let's get back to the Sentinel. So here is the Sentinel in the sidings on my 00 gauge layout Pitley, and now let's see if the sound fitting has worked. Well, that definitely seems to indicate success. Now let's run through the various different sounds on the YouTube sound file. Well, I don't know about you, but I think this is fantastic. The sound really brings the model to life and it's running really well too. On that note, let's test out the Stay Alive. I'll lift it off the track and we'll see how long it takes for the sound to stop. So a good couple of seconds there. It'll be a little less of course when the motor is running too, but on clean track this should be good enough to allow it to shunt at slow speeds, especially over Insulfrog points. And with that, let's pick up some wagons from the sidings and we'll have the Sentinel do a lap round the layout. So overall, I'm over the moon with how this project has turned out. Like I said at the start, I love this loco, but I rarely run it simply because it used to stall so often. Well, that certainly isn't the case anymore, and the fact that I've managed to fit sound in here too is a huge bonus. As much as I enjoy running steam engines on Pitley, all good heritage railways do need a little shunter of some sort to carry out day-to-day movements. While in reality the real Graham lives at Rocks by Rail, I think in this universe it's earning its keep at Pitley Steam Railway, where it can often be seen shunting around the yard and on demonstration freight trains like this one. Anyway, that's it for today's video. I do hope you've enjoyed this little sound fitting tutorial, and do let me know if this is something you'll be giving a go yourself. I've actually got a few more sound fitting videos like this in the works, so don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon too if you want to see more of these in the future. In the meantime though, thank you so much for watching everyone, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!